Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do, episode number 240. I hope and pray all is well with you. It's a new week. Yesterday, Sunday, was the first day of the week. Sunday was a fantastic day of the week for me. Being a preacher full time, that is typically my most busy day. And yesterday was no exception. So, really thankful for the wonderful blessings the Lord has provided for me and the congregation and for so many other people. And really looking forward to the week. Now, I want to dive into something that I'm really passionate about. I've been passionate about books for a long time. So you probably already know then the book I'm always going to recommend, and that is going to be the Bible. The Bible is 66 books in one book, and I'm always going to talk about the Bible. But I do also read other books as well. So growing up, I started reading books at a young age. I can't remember exactly when. I wish I would have kept up with all of the books that I've read throughout the years, but going to the public library was one of the biggest, most positive decisions and choices my mom was able to provide for me. So looking back at that, it was just a great experience for me. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We were on food stamps for a period of time. My father was not around. My dad struggled with alcohol for a number of years, which I believe cut his life short. So going to the library was a safe place. It was a place for us to learn, to grow. I was always interested in facts, stats. So whether it was with football, the Guinness Book of World Records, mystery novels, the Hardy Boys, just where the red fern grows, just a lot of different books throughout the years. And so that really helped me to develop a love for books. And so I'm thankful that that has continued on in my adult life as well. I can remember when I attended the University of Illinois that one summer, it may have been right after graduation in 2000, I believe I read 17 books that summer. I was just getting any and every kind of book that I could own, that I could buy, that I could rent or check out for a few days to read it. So the same is true for me even now. I will also say that books have opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Reading books have given me new perspective. They allow you to go to the future, to the past, to outer space, to depths of the ocean. But there is one book in particular, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, that was actually given to me from one of my physicians when I worked with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. That book actually helped me when I ended up getting severed from Pfizer back in 2008 to find or to make the wise decision, or help me make a wise decision about what I would do in 2009. So in 2009, I started a preacher training, or actually I became a part of a preacher training program in Beaumont, Texas. I was at the Dowling Road Church of Christ. And that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the rich dad in the book had what I believe was called a board of counselors or something like that, where his philosophy was to surround himself with people smarter than him. So as I thought about this preacher training program, I knew that I needed some help. I did not know how to preach. B, I knew that the two men who were at the congregation had 50 to 60 years of preaching. So I know I would be surrounding myself with people who were much smarter than I am, that would give me and allow me to have the feedback and the growth that would be necessary to get me to where I wanted to be. So that one book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, played a very pivotal role in my life. A second book that's played a big role in my life is a book called Ultra Learning by Scott Young. Ultra Learning by Scott Young. Now, he has a new book. I have not read it yet, but that book, which I believe I picked up in 2019, led me to a company called Ultra Speaking. Check out ultraspeaking.com. That led me to an opportunity to have coaches like Michael and Tristan, the founders of the company, to help me with my public speaking, to eventually becoming a coach with the company, meeting people from all around the world these last 4 or 5 years to be able to coach, to be able to learn from so many other people as well. Well, that came from a book. There is a best-selling author, Shannon Etheridge, that I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was on a talk show that I first heard about her, but I started reading her books. And eventually I joined her special online group called Blast, BLAST, and had the opportunity to share different thoughts, to work with her, to get feedback from her with respect to writing as well, and actually to get some counseling from her too during that process. Bill Phillips, he wrote the book Eating for Life and the best-selling book Body for Life years ago when I was in college. And I had the opportunity to start working out with him in 2016 with his Facebook workout group. And so having his books, taking his products, his supplements, learning about him, and then eventually working with him, being able to speak at 2 of his fitness camps was really, really cool. And that gave me a really fun opportunity to learn more, to meet so many new people. There have just been so many books that have played such a pivotal role. I always try to encourage people to read. People, reading is something that is so simple. We can go to public libraries even today. We have audible.com. We have an app called Blinkist where you can subscribe and listen to a book for 15 minutes before you decide if you want to even buy the book. We just have all of these resources. You can make your own books via Amazon.com. I've done that. I'm in my office. I'm looking at 13, 14 books that I've made throughout the last 7 years. There are so many opportunities to read, to grow, to connect, to share. Even with podcasting now, I've had a best-selling author, Robert Cheek, New York Times best-selling author, so many other people that have written books that have helped people launch books throughout the years. There is just something really amazing about books. So it makes me sad when I hear that young people don't want to read as much. Reading is always going to be fundamental. It's how God communicates to us today through his written word. So reading is always going to be something that it's never going to go away. And social media, cell phones certainly have hindered us at times with distractions and things like that. So I want to encourage you to read. You want to grow. One of the most fastest ways to grow low cost is to pick up a book. Read. And just get comfortable reading. Start off with 10 pages a day. Well, over a month, that's a 300-page book. You can read 12 books a month if you go at that pace. Start off with comic books if you so choose to. It doesn't matter what kind of book it is, but pick up a book and read. So I want to share with you, maybe you're wondering, where exactly do I begin? Well, let me share with you books that I've read this year, books that I'm currently reading as well. And maybe this will give you a good place to start and to develop the muscle, because it is a muscle, the muscle to concentrate, the muscle to focus, and to actually read. All right, let me give you a list here. The first one, and something else that I'm doing here, I'm reading books that I've read before. The first one is called How to Change Your Entire Life by Doing Absolutely Nothing. How to Change Your Entire Life by Doing Absolutely Nothing by Karen Salmonson, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It was a great book, a short little book. You can read it in maybe 20, 30 minutes. It was a gift that a friend of mine had gifted me. It is a book about learning how to do nothing, how to get comfortable with not always having something to do. Number 2, The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. I was gifted this book as well in North Carolina, where I stayed with a wonderful family there, and they had books in the guest room. And I was reading that book, The Happiness Project. It actually brought me a lot of happiness and joy. It's funny. It gave me a lot of ideas about how to increase happiness in my life. Highly recommend that book as well. Success, number 3, Success is Simple by D. Paul Riley. Success is simple. When I moved to the congregation here in Lewisville, Texas, the preacher who was formerly here had left this book, I believe. He left me a number of books. And so I read this book. It's a great book going back, I believe, to the 70s about habits, routines, mindsets with respect to being successful in the things that we do. Number 4, The Psychology of Money. I first listened to this book, The Psychology of Money, via Audible. Fantastic book by Morgan Housel, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. The Psychology of Money, it's a great book. I'm reading it in book form now as well. It will change how you think about money, how you save money, and just your perspective with money overall. Number 5, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Digital Minimalism, one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite books, as I have been detoxing, deleting social media platforms. So I'm no longer on LinkedIn. I deleted Twitter a long time ago. I tried TikTok a couple of years ago for a few days or a few weeks, got rid of that. I'm not on Snapchat. I've deleted Facebook. I still go back and forth with Instagram. I have my podcast videos right now on YouTube. So I don't really have that much social media. Social media is not really driving this podcast. And so digital minimalism with perspective on social media, and not just with social media, but digital things as a whole. It's a really great book to give you some perspective that may give you some more insights about your use and consumption of screens and digital type behavior. All right. He's got another book. This will be book recommendation number 6, and what I've also read this year as well. Again, for another time, Deep Work by Cal Newport. That book really got me started thinking about social media back in 2016. Deep Work, where I started my first Facebook account, I think in 08 or 09. So part of my thought process has been as well with Facebook. I've had it now for almost 15 years. There's been 4 or 5 months, 6, 7 months where I haven't had it throughout the years at different periods in time. But that's really a full-time job when you think about it. So Deep Work has had a big impact on me as well. Book number 7, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Essentialism. That's a great book too, that doesn't fall necessarily with the same as Deep Work and digital minimalism, but there's a lot of ideas, right? Figuring out what really matters, making a priority really a priority, and not having 10 or 11 priorities. It will cause you to think, it will challenge you to cut away, to subtract things that are not essential to your life, your family, your goals, what you're really going after. Number 8, Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Interesting book if you're an entrepreneur, about how he got started with his company called CD Baby and how he eventually sold the company, challenges along the way, the mindset of getting anything you want. I read that again and just kind of breezed through it a little bit faster the second time. Number 9, The Source by Tara Swart, who is an MD, PhD. I learned about her from the Mel Robbins podcast. The Source. If you are interested in this idea of manifesting things, people throw that word around, manifestation. I definitely have some thoughts about it too. And I don't know if I define it or think about it exactly the same way. I don't think I do, as many people in the world do. But the source she's talking about is ultimately our brains. One of the things she does talk about in the book is having a vision board or an action board. I actually like that language, having an action board. There is some similarity with some of the things she says that others before, like Dale Carnegie, has talked about, and some other books as well. So that was an interesting read. What I heard from her on that podcast interview, I wanted to look into a little bit more. Certainly, I believe in God. All great things come from Him. But there were some interesting thoughts that she had in the book called The Source, and visualization, taking action, where we put our minds, the power of the subconscious. All right. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books so far this year. Number 10 was actually a book for my son called Who Was George Washington by Robert Edwards. It's actually a great book. Who is George Washington, or who was George Washington? And I learned a lot about our first president. And my son had another book that he's reading for class, George Washington's Rules to Live by K.M. Costell. George Washington's Rules to Live By. Fun book. Learned a lot about etiquette, at least from George Washington's perspective, and different rules to live by. So I would encourage you to check out that book as well. Now, I'm in 2 book clubs. There's something really fun about book clubs. And the first is with a group of men that we're going through a book called The Spirit of the Disciplines by Dallas Willard. The Spirit of the Disciplines, and it's looking at spiritual disciplines, specifically with respect to Christianity. So that's been a very interesting book. So I'm in progress with that book. I'm reading it for the first time. Then my second book club is another faith book club with some members here at the congregation, along with my family. We're reading a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It's a great book. I've read it a few times. I've taught classes on that book before. I'm reading it again. It has so much content that it's worth reading a second and third time as well. So there's another book. I honestly forgot the title of it. I have not found it yet. So that may say something about the impact, but I was listening to it. It's a book that's free via my Audible subscription. And as I was doing chores and things like that, I wanted just to listen to something. And so it's a book by Dale Carnegie as well, which is really interesting. So he's one of my favorite authors. His book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, has also played a tremendous impact upon me. So those are books that I'm reading for this year, books I want to share with you. If you have books that you'd like to share with me or recommend, or if you know someone who's written a book that maybe you want to suggest their book for the podcast or something like that, please let me know. I love to read. I want to encourage you to read. When we read, so many great things will happen. So hopefully, maybe one of these books that I have shared with you will inspire you to go out and pick up as well. I want to thank you. I know that you're listening because you have an I Can Do spirit. I know that you are seeking to improve and to grow in your life. And I really appreciate your support for this podcast. Please leave me a rating and a review. Share this podcast with someone else that you know that will benefit from it. And I am certainly thankful for people who have been reaching out to me, who have been listeners to the podcast, who are looking to become a guest on the podcast. Really looking forward to talking to you and learning more about you. All right, we're going to stop here. Thank you so much for your support. Keep on reading. Take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.